The Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Blockchain Super Conference is coming to Dallas, Texas, February 16, 17, and 18 in 2018. If you know of a better way to get the latest insider knowledge about crypto, to hear directly from the top minds in this field, to interact personally with 800 fellow crypto lovers, hodlers, investors, miners, traders, developers, and founders, then I'd like to hear about it. If you don't, then you don't want to miss out. Register today for the Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Blockchain Super Conference. Go to bitcoinsuperconference.com and register today as a super early bird to get the lowest rates on tickets and hotel rooms. That's bitcoinsuperconference.com.
Welcome to Almost Here, Round the Corner Future Technology Podcasts with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies poised to transform our lives for better or worse are the focus of this podcast. Almost Here means these technologies are now here and starting to be used, or just around the corner, from Bitcoin to artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.
Hello and welcome everyone to the Future Tech Podcast. My name is Josh Thomas and I'm here with David Henderson of Sweetbridge.com. Sweetbridge is a platform for low-cost trading and banking for everyone. Hello David, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks.
Glad to have you on. It seems like your particular platform has become really popular lately in different variations. A lot of people are trying to create exchanges where it's easier to trade, and the banking part of it can get a little bit hairy with regulations and things like that. Take us through a little bit of an introduction. What is Sweetbridge? What sets it apart from the rest of the exchanges and trading platforms that are out there right now?
Okay, well, Sweetbridge is really a team of global contributors, and we're building a blockchain alliance to cover lots of projects in lots of areas for commerce, supply chain, and interest-free loans. And I think the biggest single difference is if you go right back to the beginning of blockchain applications and Bitcoin, which is very much in the news at the moment, the fluctuation in the price of Bitcoin excites a lot of people, provides a lot of opportunities, derivatives, trading, investment, but it's not a great currency to use for transactional trade or borrowing. So I think it's just the volatility and the changing in price. So if you go back to May 22nd, 2010, you've got two pizzas bought. I'm sure you know this story, for 5,000 Bitcoins each, which if you're very good at arithmetic, you'll work out that 5,000 times, what are we today, 18,000 or something. It's going to be about 80 million a pizza or something. So yeah. Someone's bent out of shape on that deal, right? And the point is, if you had let's say you had an overdraft or a loan in Bitcoin, you wake up in the morning and say, oh no, you owe 20% more than you did last night, or you go to sleep and you wake up, oh, you owe 15% less. It's too volatile for people really to transact in it. The same if you're buying goods and services. You shake hands and you agree on the deal, perhaps in US dollars. If you agreed it in Bitcoin, then, by the time you come to settle, once you've built the goods and shipped them and delivered them to the customer, you look around and say, oh, hold on a second. That's $20,000 more I'm giving you now because the price has gone up of the currency that I'm using to pay you in. So it's never been an ideal currency for business to business transactions, or indeed personal lending or anything like that.
I think that you're speaking about a topic that's very important, and I think it's unfortunate that a lot of our contemporaries kind of sweep this under the rug. But you really can't have your cake and eat it too on this. You either want Bitcoin to be a speculative tool, or you want it to be used as a transactional currency, but they really don't. Those two ideas can't coexist for the exact reason you just described. Who would want to pay in Bitcoin if Bitcoin's going to go up 20% tomorrow?
Absolutely. and that's just what you're seeing. People are holding on to it. They don't want to sell it. And you know, there are methods for spending it. There's debit cards issued out of the U.S. I think it's a New York bank that supports those, and then there's debit cards issued all across Europe and the rest of the world, where you can actually spend your Bitcoin and your Ether. But then you have people, as soon as they've done that, they look back. I did that at the beginning of this year, and now those sandwiches I bought at the beginning of the year using my debit card are now very, very expensive sandwiches if I convert back to the price that I paid then, which is reasonable in my own currency, but it's just that Bitcoin wasn't worth very much. So you're absolutely right, Josh. The conflicting things are that the use of the currency as a transactional device or a transaction medium or a store of value. And, you know, for transactions, you don't have the same objectives as a store of value. And, you know, that leads to everyone buying it and holding on to it, which isn't great for liquidity, and it's not great for doing deals in it. It makes a few people extraordinarily wealthy if they've got in very early on, but it's not particularly useful for a business today or tomorrow, or a person to take a loan out. You know, I think that's a fairly frightening scenario, taking a loan in Bitcoin and then wondering what you're going to be owing next week or next month or next year. So there's a real desire to create a stable token. And there's been a few projects have tried to do that, and they've been, you know, successful to an extent, but they haven't really cracked it in terms of creating a stable currency that's, you know, pegged to another sensible real fiat currency. And in our case, that's the US dollar to begin with. Our bridge coin would peg to that. And, you know, it's basically going to do nothing exciting. It's going to be the most, you know, dull coin in existence. It will stick to the US dollar, and we have mechanisms, ex-Federal Reserve economists, mathematicians. We've even issued a white paper on the mechanism for doing this and measuring the amount you can lend and borrow against it. But that stability is what will drive finance and drive the financing of supply chain transactions in the future.
I appreciate you indulging me on that, but because I think it's an important topic that not enough people will bring up. But back to your platform here, Sweetbridge. Talk to me a little more about that. What was the inspiration for this? And you know, tell me.
Yeah, sure. Well, I've worked the last 20 years in you know, the intersection of supply chain finance and technology, and again we came up against asset heavy, marginally profitable companies trying to squeeze out an existence and finding it took an inordinate amount of time to get paid. But they still had the assets, but they couldn't get any financing for them, or they could, but it would be at a very expensive rate. And, you know, the larger the customer they had, the longer the payment terms would be. And, you know, you ask the question, well, what's your payment terms? And they say, oh, well, it used to be 45, but then they asked for 60. Used to be 60, then they asked for 90. Used to be 90, and now they're asking for 120. Why? Well, because they're, you know, the world's largest companies, and they can do that. They can choose not to pay for 90 days, and if you want them as a customer, you just have to fall in line. So it made it increasingly difficult for these companies to access that working capital and having it tied up. And if you think about the requirements for a stable coin and kind of the history of that, you need a lot of velocity of the currency for your whatever you're creating. So it needs to turn over multiple times, and that is actually very well served in the supply chain, because you literally, the guy who's manufacturing something, he has a factory, he has a workforce, he has raw materials. He needs to manufacture the stuff and then ship it out every week, every month, every year. And likewise, the guy receiving it has to receive it, put it in his store and sell it. There's no, you know, there's no, I'm just going to hold on to this and not do anything with it. So the bottom line is that leads to a lot of turnover and activity in the actual currency, which is great for liquidity and great for stability, because you can always find it there, and there aren't scarcities and demands on it that it can't meet. So it's that circle of cash going round that supply chain, which is an excellent vehicle for a currency.
Well, yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. And as far as Bitcoin may or may not ever get there. I mean, the future is extremely uncertain and volatile. But if we could get to a point to where it was used frequently and it was readily available, like you're describing, then that would be a much more interesting situation. You don't think that Bitcoin's going to get there, right?
I think there's been a lot of innovation. They tried to do larger block sizes, more transactions, and I'm trying to think what the other one is. Mining cost. There's a whole load of reasons why the challenges Bitcoin faces, and the biggest one at the moment is the excitement and froth about people investing in it and wanting to buy it. While you have an endless queue of people saying, gimme, 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 you're not going to keep the price stable. So I think Bitcoin may fork into something which has, higher transaction speed, which I think is an issue today, lower mining costs, which I also think is an issue today, transactions per second, decentralization away from mining pools. Those are all challenges. Doesn't make it a bad investment or a good one. It's just these are features which prevent it being treated as a serious currency. If you take a high frequency trading environment and you look at the trades done and the latency and the speed at which we can today currently change money on exchanges and perform transactions, that's just completely unthinkable in a blockchain environment today. There are people working on making that happen, but today the idea that you could use Bitcoin as an exchange to do high frequency trading on is just crazy. It's got anonymity, it's currency and country agnostic, which is what people like about it. Doesn't matter where you are or what your currency is, you can exchange value with someone, and it's providing these transactions at relatively low cost, although occasionally the actual transaction fees do climb before they're adjusted by the algorithm. But I don't think it will become the currency of trade, if you put it that way.
So talk to me from your perspective. You have this platform, and you have spoken a little bit about it, but there was something you mentioned earlier about working capital loans on existing accounts receivable. Is that something that your bank does?
Well, we're not a bank, I'd say, first of all, but we're working on collateralizing. What we have today is the collateralization of crypto assets. And I'll tell you that sounds like a jump away from supply chain and invoice receivables, but the reason for that is that actually asserting title to something. So if I have a bundle of invoices here and you say, are these your invoices? And I say, yes, they are. And you say, are they still open and not paid yet? And I say, yes, they're not paid yet. And I give them to you by PDF or email or whatever. You have absolutely no way of knowing whether they're valid or not, and whether they're going to be paid, and whether they're still outstanding, and whether I've given them to someone else to discount, or they're not valid invoices and I just printed them up with my computer because I'm short of cash. You've no way of knowing that. Conversely, on the blockchain, that you either have the private key or you don't have the private key. You either control the funds or you don't control the funds. So that it's very clear to assert title to a digital asset such as Bitcoin or Ethereum. Much harder to do with these other classes of assets. Our objective is to collateralize all of those assets, including receivables, inventory, warehouse space, all the standard supply chain things, and allow lending to be done, borrowing to be done against that collateral once it's locked. And we are working with a large number of lawyers on how to do that safely, legally, across multiple jurisdictions of the world.
So where would you say you are in your development at this point? Sweetbridge is how long have you been in development, and when do you see this launching as a customer-facing platform?
That's a great question. We've been really at it for over a year. I think I started in October of last year, but we will have an open crowd sale early next year, and at that point we will be our first objective is working on the release of the vault, which will allow assets to be crypto assets to be locked in there and then borrowed against. And on from there as a roadmap, there's other classes of assets. Of course, after solidifying the assertion of title, that could be locked in there and borrowed against too. So you can see that in our white paper and one of our white papers, and also in presentation materials that's our objective.
Okay, very good. And as we look ahead to the future of you're creating a low-cost trading platform and you're wanting to allow banking for everyone. What innovations do you see in the next 12 months to 24 months in this industry?
Oh, okay. Wow. I think there's so much coming down the pipeline. I think we're challenging fees, so we're trying to target getting transactional fees down to between 10 and 3 basis points. Which, at the moment, it's the Wild West for cryptocurrency, and, percentages are in the, single digits. So you've got 100 basis points or 200 basis points being charged for getting in and out of things and doing transactions. We're building a network which will be run as, there'll be not-for-profit entities. They'll be member run, and they will reinvest any profits they make into reducing those fees. So the idea is to make it almost frictionless finance. And I forgot to mention at the beginning, but 10% of our funds are pledged to social impact, sustained economic development in challenging environments or countries. So we're really trying to push this down. We're not trying to become the new rent seeker taking all the money for doing everything. We're really trying to be transparent about it and set up these not-for-profits, which of course are pledged to not distribute assets at below par value and never distribute dividends as kind of a sign that what can we do with it if we can't do either of those things? We have to plow the money back in and make it cheaper for the members using the platform. So it's kind of like I think the US would be a credit union. Where you're running it, by the people for the people.
Okay, very interesting. So Sweetbridge.com, and I know we mentioned at the beginning that this is a platform for low-cost trading and banking for everyone. But is there a specific group of people that may find this more useful than others? For instance, someone who has a 9-to-5 or someone who's a full-time investor. Is there any kind of particular audience that would resonate better with your mission?
Well, that's a great question, and I'll bring in the fact that all of our members require KYC and AML, so it's not open to people who would fail Know Your Customer and anti-money laundering registration. So there's no anonymity here. It's really between known entities. So I'd say that first, and secondly, the people that it would be most useful for, well, you imagine small to medium-sized enterprises trying to increase their working capital. Maybe they have some very large customers. Maybe they want to finance, future revenues or a capital investment. They can use our token as a discount token to work against the fees on the platform. We're modeling that too to run those things for them. The crypto investor can take his Bitcoin or Ethereum and lock it in our vault, and then borrow against that to purchase an additional crypto asset, which allows them to speculate, even though they still technically own the original asset. They just can't put their hands on it until they repay Sweetbridge protocol what they've borrowed. So I think those two groups, small to medium-sized enterprises, we're working with a rice trading consortium in Vietnam, and we're looking at global projects on a social scale, alliances with 20 or 30 different companies. So there's too much going on to try and take you through it all. But we have the social impact side, which we're trying to help for, I think, challenged currencies, challenged countries would definitely benefit from the ability to be able to trade freely as they do today in cryptocurrencies, but with the added stability of not having their funds in something which they worry about going up or down drastically overnight.
Okay, very good. So we're going to wrap up for today. It's been David Henderson from Sweetbridge.com. David, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing this. Any final thoughts for our audience before we go?
Thank you very much, Josh. I think I look forward to the platform launching next year, and we'll all be wondering what the Bitcoin and Ethereum prices will be doing then.
That is the golden question for sure. Yeah. So thanks again for joining us, and thank you to our audience for being here. We'll see you next time on the Future Tech Podcast.
The Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Blockchain Super Conference is coming to Dallas, Texas, February 16, 17, and 18 in 2018. If you know of a better way to get the latest insider knowledge about crypto, to hear directly from the top minds in this field, to interact personally with 800 fellow crypto lovers, hodlers, investors, miners, traders, developers, and founders, then I'd like to hear about it. If you don't, then you don't want to miss out. Register today for the Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Blockchain Super Conference. Go to bitcoinsuperconference.com and register today as a super early bird to get the lowest rates on tickets and hotel rooms. That's bitcoinsuperconference.com.
You have been listening to Almost Here, Around the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Subscribe to this podcast, post a review to discover more future technologies that are poised to transform our lives for better or worse, such as Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.